Hey everyone, welcome back. This time, Argentina's in the spotlight. You guys sent in a wild mix of headlines. There are economies all over the place, politicians are going at it, and some stories even have me wondering about the bigger picture. Ready to dive in?
Well, it's funny you should say dive in because Argentina's economy is kind of the talk of the town, right?
You mean Wiley's building with humidity thing? That was pretty out there. What do you make of it?
Pretty creative way to describe things, huh? Basically, he's saying Argentina's problems aren't new, they're like ingrained. Like imagine moisture in the walls.
So he's blaming the old administrations for all the economic troubles they're having now.
Pretty much, yeah. He says years of neglect and bad decisions led to this whole humidity situation.
And that humidity is a 52.9% poverty rate, right?
Exactly. That number's been everywhere this week. It's hard to ignore what that means for people down there.
Makes that whole building metaphor a little, I don't know.
A little tone deaf.
Yeah, kinda. Like, sure, the building might be messed up, but there are people living in it right now, you know?
A lot of people are saying that. Taking care of those long-term issues is important, but it can't be at the expense of people who need help now.
Tough spot to be in. And speaking of tough spots, we got to talk about Miley's education stance. Vetoing more university funding. That's a bold move, especially with all this talk about inflated student numbers.
Yeah, it's definitely got people talking. Carlos Torrendell, the education secretary, even said universities might be inventing students to get more cash.
Whoa, inventing them. That's a serious accusation.
Mm.
What are the universities saying about all this?
The Consejo de Rectores, they're like the big group representing the public universities. They're saying it's totally false. They're pointing to the Sistema de Información Universitaria, it's their national database, as proof.
So it's a he said, she said situation.
Pretty much. And it makes you wonder, right, what's the real reason for cutting the funding? Is it about the numbers or is it something else?
Feels like it goes deeper than just some numbers on a spreadsheet.
Definitely. It's about the role of education in Argentina, especially public education. And with the Asociación de Defensores del Pueblo saying this could hurt students from poorer backgrounds, this is a big deal.
It's amazing how a story about university funding can become about something so much bigger.
That's the thing about these deep dives, right? What looks like isolated events are usually part of something bigger.
Which reminds me, Malie and Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner are at it again. This time, it's about pensions. Just a heads up for anyone who's new to this whole thing, Fernandez de Kirchner, she's a former president and a major player, even now.
Right, she's a big deal in Argentine politics. And Milei blaming her for the pension system, that's a direct hit.
It's more than just pensions this time, too, right? There's that Malvinas agreement causing a ruckus. With Victoria Villarreal, she's Miley's running mate, calling it a surrender. Then there's Amnesty International saying Argentina's going backward on reproductive rights, especially after they made so much progress with legalizing abortion.
You're right, that's a lot to cover. Each of those could be a deep dive on their own. Let's start with the pensions debate. It's complicated, and it goes way back in Argentina.
So it's not just about the money, it's about, like, the whole system, right?
Yeah, exactly. And in Argentina, they've had their fair share of economic roller coasters, right? So people just want to know their retirement money is safe. Any whiff of something fishy, and people freak out.
Makes sense. Speaking of things that could erupt, the Malvinas thing, man, Villarreal did not hold back on that agreement.
Right. I mean, calling it a surrender, that's going to get people fired up. She's playing to that whole national pride thing.
Yeah, like even after all this time, mention Malvinas, and everyone loses their minds.
For sure. History runs deep, right? It shows you, even something like an economic agreement, it can become a whole symbol.
Speaking of things that are about way more than they seem, that Amnesty International report, this isn't just healthcare. This is like human rights, women's rights, huge stuff.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Amnesty's saying that by limiting this healthcare stuff, the government's basically going against what that 2020 abortion law was all about.
It's like they took a step forward and then decided to walk back 2 steps. After that huge fight for abortion rights, it's, I don't know, disheartening.
Totally. And it shows you, progress, it's not always a straight line. Just because you win one battle, it doesn't mean the war's over.
It's like a reminder you can't ever let your guard down. All right, so Argentina, we've got economic metaphors, political showdowns, pensions, the Malvinas, even reproductive rights. They're dealing with a lot right now. But we've got to zoom out a bit because there's some major stuff going on around the world, too. What's got your eye on the international scene?
Honestly, that attack on Leo Aquila in Brazil, That one really got me. He's running for city council in Sao Paulo. He's trans, and someone tries to kill him for it. It's scary.
It's a brutal reminder that this stuff is real, this political violence, and it's getting worse, especially in Latin America.
Like, politics is a dangerous game now, literally.
Yeah, and Brazil's seen a lot of it. 455 cases this year alone.
455. Seriously. What's going on down there? Why so much violence? It's not just one thing, you know? It's like everything's getting so intense. Politically, people are divided, nobody trusts each other. And then you've got economic worries, fake news spreading online. It's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, not a good situation.
Yeah.
And then in Chile, you've got the police chief, Ricardo Yanez, quitting right before his trial for that crackdown on the protests back in 2019. Convenient timing, huh?
Right. It makes you think, you know? Those protests, it all started with a subway fare hike, but it became about so much more: inequality,
Well-
injustice, and the police, they came down hard. 30 people died. More were hurt. So yeah, Yanez quitting, it's something, but it doesn't change what happened.
Feels like there's still a lot of healing that needs to happen there. And speaking of things that are far from over, that whole Middle East situation, it just keeps getting worse.
It's like a tinderbox over there ready to explode. That assassination of Hassan Nasrallah, Hezbollah's leader, it changed everything. Israel's hitting Lebanon with airstrikes, Hezbollah's firing rockets back. People are dying, and it feels like nobody can stop it.
It's a reminder that this stuff matters, even if it feels far away. What happens on the other side of the world can affect us all.
Absolutely. We can't just ignore it and hope it goes away. It's all connected. The politics, the social unrest, the history.
So, taking a step back from Argentina, looking at the bigger picture, what's the takeaway here? What should we be paying attention to?
Look for the connections. How do these things, like, how do bad economic policies or social media or just like angry rhetoric, how do those things create the conditions for things to go haywire? Whether it's Argentina, Brazil, or somewhere else entirely, these are tough questions, no easy answers, but we have to try to understand.
Right. It's complicated, but we have to try to make sense of it.
Exactly.
And on that note, that's another deep dive in the books. From Argentina's classrooms to the streets of Brazil, from the halls of power in Chile to the heart of the Middle East. It's been a wild ride, but hey, that's the world we live in, right? Thanks for sticking with us, and we'll catch you next time. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.